Well, here we are again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. We are chatting a bit more here on 40 Minutes of Hell about the NBA Draft Lottery that happened earlier in the week. If you missed our reaction episode to that, we recorded and released a reaction episode on the evening of the NBA Draft Lottery. We talked, it was me and Ro Hunter, we talked in detail about, in particular, the numbers 1 and 2 and a little bit of the number 3 pick. Basically, we talked about the outcome of the big 3 prospects of Zion Williamson, Ja Morant, and RJ Barrett. Those are the big 3. Those are the 3 future stars of the NBA to come out of this draft. A lot of good players in this draft. I've seen some people have some opinions that this is a bit of a weaker draft. I think we're just starting to really understand 2 things. A, we're starting to understand that that once you get past 2 or 3, maybe 4 prospects in general, drafts in the NBA do not have like guys you build teams around. They have important pieces to building teams, that's for sure, but they don't really have guys that you build teams around at like the 4 or 5 spot most of the time, based on our projections. How often are we wrong on that, though? I mean, look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? He was not a top 5 pick. He was not projected to be a top 5 pick. In fact, people were kind of surprised when he was picked by the Bucks because he was this unknown European oddity. There's always a few of those. We had, thankfully, scouting has gotten good enough where we at least knew that Luka Doncic was going to be good and very NBA ready. We were kind of a little bit more prepared for Luka there, but still not quite like 100% prepared. So that being said, I mean, drafts are a crapshoot anyway. And there's no sense really talking about it all that much. So let's talk about it a lot in a podcast right here. Okay, as mentioned, quick recap. Obviously, Zion Williamson is the projected overwhelming number 1 overall pick. There are the critiques, of course, that he is too small to play his position and so on and so forth. Zion is flat out the definition now of the modern day positionless player. Yes, he may kind of be your power forward, but power forwards these days are asked to be Draymond Green, or, Giannis Antetokounmpo is classified as a power forward these days, even though he is anything but a big man, a post player. Power forwards are not post players anymore. You pretty much have a center, and then you have 4 guys that are out on the perimeter. That's the modern game. And with that, power forwards have to be asked to run the length of the court in the break. They have to be, able to handle the ball well enough to do so, to make some decent passes, so on and so forth. Zion does all of that. He is the hyper-athletic Draymond Green without maybe some of the disciplinary personality issues. He was a good offensive player, obviously averaging shooting 68% for the year or whatever. He's also a very, very good defensive player. You mix in his athleticism and his strength, and he's the prototype for where the NBA is heading. Behind him, of course, you've got Ja Morant, who I think is the most talented player in the draft. That's a big differentiation between him and Zion, obviously. And would be the type of player that if Memphis decided he fit, they would want to take instantly and continue this move away from grit and grind and into this new identity that the Memphis Grizzlies are trying to develop for themselves. Now, there is the question of whether or not they want that to happen, that they want to scrap Mike Conley, who they really have built the team around, and they trust his veteran leadership. He is the leader on that team. There's the question there of do you stick with him because he is your team leader, or do you go ahead and go full scorched earth and build entirely around all of the youth? Because I still am unsure whether Conley and Morant can play together, since they're so similar in their abilities to distribute the ball and all of that. So I'm curious to see what Memphis does here. I wonder if there would be a move made for any reason. But when you get into the actual moves to be made, you got to start with the New York Knicks. As mentioned in mine and Rose episode earlier in the week, the Knicks were definitely banking on getting the number 1 or number 2 pick, and then trying to trade that for Anthony Davis. The New York Knicks, that was the rumors, those were the reports, and that's what it seemed like their strategy was going to be. You could tell the disappointment on Patrick Ewing's face when they pulled up the number 3 draft pick instead of anything higher than that. This is really super, super important because the Knicks do not have the trade pieces that some other teams might. The Los Angeles Lakers, for example, have some trade pieces available to them. And we'll talk more about the Lakers right there. But adding that number 4 pick in general adds to their potential trade pieces. New York is kind of stuck in this position where they don't have the pieces that they wanted to be able to try to make a move up for Anthony Davis. The New York Knicks roster right now went through that big overhaul and ditched Kristaps Porzingis already. They just don't have the types of trade pieces that that would make it a tractable deal. They're really banking towards building something in free agency. They're really banking towards trying to attract a Kyrie Irving, a Kevin Durant, that sort of thing. That is what the Knicks are banking on right now. That is their offseason approach. So not lucking out in the draft lottery kind of throws things for a loop a little bit because they can't go and make a trade for Anthony Davis to make themselves more appealing for the free agents as well. The Knicks got screwed pretty hard right here. And that's what makes you wonder if they think that maybe the number 3 pick would be enough to entice the New Orleans Pelicans to make that Anthony Davis trade with them. I don't know what sort of other resources they could possibly include in all of that. But if it could be something that the Knicks wait and see about. I don't know what sort of, maybe they try to work out an agreement like in free agency, some sort of sign and trade with a free agent. I don't know. But the Knicks are in this terrible spot here in which they can't quite make the deal flat out that they want to make. And they aren't quite as appealing to the free agents yet as they wish they could be. Now, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that they are able to somehow make a package that appeals enough to David Griffin and the New Orleans Pelicans to go ahead and pull the trigger on that, Anthony Davis for the number 3 spot, so on and so forth, to get someone like R.J. Barrett. They could even try to work something out maybe with, there could be a 3-team trade going on where maybe Memphis feels like R.J. Barrett works better with what they've got instead of Ja Morant. And they make a deal between the Knicks and the Pelicans to move all of that around. I don't know. It would take a lot of work. The Knicks have the most ground to cover or to make up when it comes to trying to put together a good enough trade package to do anything with this number 3 pick. Now, of course, if the Knicks were aiming for something other than this, and this is what they ended up with, there's much worse consolation prizes to land than R.J. Barrett. R.J. Barrett, I really like him. I know there's some people that, they soured on R.J. Barrett as the season went on. I think it's because going into the year, the expectations were higher on R.J. Barrett than they were for Zion Williamson. And Zion surprised people by being a more well-rounded player because up until then, all we had seen were the super athletic dunks and how big he was and everything. And that was about it. RJ was always going to be a little bit more of the actual player who people thought would be more NBA ready. So going into the year was projected where he was going to be number 1. Now where everyone's looking at him going, well, now he's just like the 3rd best. I still really like him. And the question there is is he a guy that you can build a franchise around? Because that's where the situation the Knicks are in right now. They either need to make some trades in order to completely to get their franchise into a win right now sort of position, which FYI rarely ever works. It's the difference between the Miami Heat of 2010 and the Los Angeles Lakers of 2018-19. RJ, though, if you're willing to stick with him, I think he can grow into something very special. Now, I think there's a lot there. He's the start of, he could be the start of a franchise based entirely on, I mean, what he was able to do in college. He played on a very good team in a very tough conference against very good opposition. And in the process, averaged 22.6 points, 7.6 rebounds, and 4.3 assists per game, which are great college stats. He is a pretty well-rounded stats sheet stuffer, as old Dick Vitale always likes to say. I still see a lot of DeMar DeRozan and R.J. Barrett. I think that's purposeful. R.J. being from, I believe, Mississauga, Ontario, right outside of Toronto. That for a lot of his high school years, he was watching DeMar DeRozan and the Toronto Raptors. So I think there's a lot of how he plays the game that is based on DeMar DeRozan. And so there's that aspect there. DeMar DeRozan is a unique player because he was a very raw prospect coming out of college. He was not very athletic, but he was not as refined as, honestly, he was not as refined as RJ is right now. And so it makes you think that RJ might have the potential of being even more refined as he goes on. He well-rounded, of course, as I just said. The questions with RJ is like whether he's going to be able to develop a good enough shot to survive in the modern NBA game, because the modern NBA game, you have either like the positionless forward, you have the sharp shooting long range guard, or you have the hyper athletic big man. Those are kind of the three primary archetypes in the modern day NBA. RJ Barrett fits a little bit more in a going out of style archetype, maybe a Tracy McGrady-esque wing who is great all around, maybe not a go-to like elite scorer at all times. I mean, he's not a Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan shooting guard type. He is not... I don't know. He's an interesting prospect. Some of the comparisons he's gotten, we're going to look at some of the comparisons he's gotten, therefore, because of how interesting he is. Some of the comparisons he's gotten are to two players that I happen to really enjoy the comparisons. Jalen Rose and Lamar Odom. Now, a lot of times he gets comparisons to players simply because he's left-handed. So that does happen because people are like, oh, well, what can we compare him to? James Harden? Well, no, just because he's left-handed doesn't mean that instantly, he's James Harden. They don't play anything similar at all. Jalen Rose, I could see that comparison working out quite well, because they are both. I see them both as being more guards. Some people probably consider R.J. Barrett to be maybe like a wing forward or whatever. I see him as more of a true tall shooting guard. He's not Klay Thompson. He's not a three-point sharpshooter. That's why I compare more to DeMar DeRozan, who is a better slasher like that. And so Jalen Rose kind of makes sense then as a tall guard who works well with the ball in his hands, not necessarily known as like the great shooter or whatever. And in particular, I like that comparison because I think that him being more of a guard in the style of play is what differentiates him more than Lamar Odom, who was a point forward, a 6'10" guy who handles the ball well, has good court vision, but also can play down in the post a little bit. That's the difference there between the DeMar Jalen Rose comparison and the Lamar Odom comparison, is the fact that RJ is not really as like an in-the-post type of guy. He's more of the slashing. That's how he gets his points. But one comparison that I've seen pop up every now and then, which is a little bit on the fringe, but I kind of like it, is a Carmelo Anthony comparison. RJ, not really the same like body type as Carmelo, and Carmelo, again, was, probably a little bit more of like a true forward, wing into the post type of forward. RJ's got the ability and the athleticism, obviously, to pull in some rebounds. I mean, he averaged 7.5 rebounds a game in college, even as, a guard. So he's got that ability to contend down low from a rebounding standpoint. But I just, his scoring ability, his slashing, Carmelo Anthony had a lot of that coming into the NBA. And it's what's made him such a really, really good prospect when he was arriving. I like this comparison, and I mean it as a compliment because I could see what a lot of what RJ does being stuff that Carmelo did really well coming into the NBA. Carmelo developed better post moves, as his career went on. I thought he became a little bit more of a refined post scorer. I think he's better at that than LeBron James ever got, in terms of like doing more in the post, and that's something that people disagree with me a lot on, and that's perfectly fine. He never quite became like an elite outside shooter, and you saw that a lot with his tortured time in Houston and with OKC. In the OKC, he attempted more three-pointers than he ever had before, and actually was kind of hitting them was hitting more of them than ever before, but I think at a lower percentage, something like that. So while the RJ and Carmelo comparisons, I mean it as a compliment, the Knicks might just see it as a negative because obviously Carmelo Anthony played for the Knicks and was supposed to be the guy that helped turn them around and make them a power in the East. And Carmelo proved to not necessarily be the type of guy that you could really build that type of team around. So they may look at RJ Barrett and wonder whether he is the level of star or the type of player and leader that you can actually build a franchise around. Therefore, I would not be surprised to see the Knicks try to turn the RJ Barrett, ability and hype into maybe trying to trade it for a more established player instead of what they're doing right now. But then there's the Lakers. And that's why, of course, I say the Knicks are stuck in the worst possible position for what they have. The Lakers in that number 4 pick, it puts them behind the obvious clear-cut top 3 players and kind of into that position of, okay, well, what great side players, what great accessory pieces do we try to snag now? That's the territory that happens once you get past the top couple of guys in any NBA draft. You get guys that are very, very good, probably going to be, all-stars, probably going to be great, accessory play. Not necessarily the type of player that you build a team around, but the type of player that you use to continue building a team. That's how I always view these levels in the draft. And sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you end up with a Giannis who transcends the position that you expected him to be at, and that's perfectly fine. It doesn't happen often. And in this draft, you do wonder a little bit whether there's any of those guys available. But there are really good players here. That number 4 pick for the Lakers, though, it's kind of not where they want to be. I think they're fine with it because they were expected to be much lower than this, outside of the top 10, and they're kind of hoping that maybe this is enough for them to be able to finally pull off that Anthony Davis trade that they really badly wanted to put through in February and New Orleans denied. Here's a spoiler alert. The Lakers are not going to get Anthony Davis. I don't know why people keep pushing this narrative. The Pelicans are not wanting to deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. They're just not. The Lakers do not have anything right now that the Pelicans are going to look at and just say, yes, that sounds great, let's do that. Because the Pelicans are mad at the Lakers for trying to push this big city, we hold all of the bargaining chips mentality that they were pushing. So that move is just not going to happen. The Lakers have to do something else with this number 4 pick. If they keep this pick, then what they do depends entirely on if they make other trades. For example, one of the trades that they're talking about doing is maybe they don't like the way that Lonzo Ball is fitting as their point guard around LeBron James, and they want to get a different guard that would play better. Maybe they think that they package this number 4 pick and no, they don't package the pick. Sorry, they're keeping the pick in this scenario. But maybe they're thinking that they get rid of Kyle Kuzma and are able to put him towards a better player. Maybe they decide they make a big package move that includes Kuzma and Josh Hart, for example, and they need to get someone to fill that Josh Hart role instead. So depending on all of this, they have some options here because there's a lot of players that could easily be that number 4 pick. If they want to go with a shooting guard, then there's the obvious choice of Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech. At this point in time, Culver has become, I think, the best, like the second best 2 guard, because I'm still counting R.J. Barrett as a 2 guard. He's the second best 2 guard in the draft. I don't think you find anyone else. You find some real good like ones somewhere in there, some real good points. You find some good wings. I mean, his teammate Cam Reddish is still considered to be, one of the better wing prospects here. But as far as the 2 guards go, no one has done more to establish their draft stock than Jarrett Culver did in the NCAA tournament. He's about 6'5". He's got good size for the position, 6'5", 6'6", about 195, 200 pounds, something like that. He's a good driver cutter. He's a solid defender. I mean, he's just a very complete player for that number 2 spot, which could fit very well around a LeBron James, oriented team. Probably more of a J.R. Smith than a Dwayne Wade when it comes to some of LeBron's 2-spot teammates. But he, and that's mostly because as of right now, it's not entirely sure whether or not he has enough consistent and dominant scoring ability to provide more than, 15 points a game, something like that. What it comes down to with Culver is whether he develops the outside touch a whole lot more than what he's showing. But he's good. If the Lakers want to go with a number 2 pick, then or a number 2 spot pick here, then they got to go Jarrett Culver. He's the best option there. If they decide that they want to move Kuzma and think that Kuz has kind of reached his ceiling or whatever, this is the unlikeliest of scenarios, by the way, considering Kuzma was sent to the draft lottery to be the representative. I feel like they really like what they've got with Kuz. I don't blame them. If they did decide to move Kuz away, which I don't think that they would, but if they did make a move like moving Kuz away, then they'd want to look at someone who fits the wing forward, wing then like power forward type slot, the Zion Williamson the type of slot. One of their options is DeAndre Hunter. He might be a bit more of a guard than he is a forward, but he's a bit thicker guy. So while some people might consider him to be a guard, I think the way he plays, he would translate well into a Kuzma spot. Not as tall, but still about 225, 230 pounds. He is a strong wing player. His appeal here and what he does differently than what Kuzma does is that he's a better 3-and-D type of player, which is a very valuable position in the modern NBA. He's a great defender, and he's quite good. I'm looking at, what did he say? I had the stats right here. There it is. Sorry, I misplaced the statistic. But he hit almost 44% of his 3-point attempts this season, which is really huge. As a spot-up shooter, if he's going to be a 3-and-D guy on the next level, that's great. His question, I think, is where does he fit as a player, and does it mean that he is maybe not the right fit for the Lakers? Is he too much of a true wing and not enough of what they want with maybe replacing someone like Kuzma if they move him, or kind of being an accessory piece to Kuz? That's the question here. I find it unlikely that DeAndre Hunter goes to the Lakers. He would just be an option here if they wanted to go with someone who is that wing / kind of like modern day 4 type of player. I think he's a little bit more of a wing guy, and so I don't think he ends up in the Los Angeles organization. A bit of a wild card. I have 2 wild card picks here. that I think the Lakers could, if they kept this number 4 pick and if they make some other moves, in particular, if they move away the guy that maybe seems to not fit quite as well with LeBron James and Lonzo Ball. The question is whether or not Lonzo and LeBron actually do get along. And obviously after the whole Lakers try to trade their entire team away debacle of this past season, there's a lot of these young guys, Lonzo and Brandon Ingram in particular, that you got to think, and the reports are saying, are not really happy in LA because of the fact they feel disrespected by the organization. If this is the case, 2 guys you could be seeing here, if the Lakers decide that they want to get a point guard that can complement LeBron James more, you've got the intriguing prospect of Darius Garland from Vanderbilt, and you've got the proven prospect of Coby White at North Carolina. All right, Darius Garland, we'll talk about him first. He had a torn meniscus, played only 5 games at Vanderbilt before this injury, and that obviously derailed everything for him because we don't know enough about whether or not he is the type of player that we all think he is. His whole thing is that he had a good shooting touch in the style of the modern shooting point guard, a la Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, Trae Young. He was supposed to kind of be that style. If that's the case, then what he naturally seems like, if this is, theoretically, and if the rumors are true about what he is capable of doing, because as I mentioned before, we didn't see enough about it. It could be the Lakers don't think he's proven enough to take at the number 4 spot. But he would be the next evolutionary step in someone like a Mario Chalmers or Norris Cole type of scoring point guard that LeBron James had a decent amount of success with back in Miami. If Garland is more of a point guard who is like a scoring or shooting point guard, you can leave the distribution part of the ball handling process to King James and then trust Darius Garland to add I would say, the next evolutionary step of Mario Chalmers on steroids type of thing. Or even, to some aspect of Kyrie Irving, because Garland, from what we saw in high school before he got to Vanderbilt, what we've seen about Garland is that he has good range off the dribble in particular. So I'm very intrigued by Darius Garland here, and I wonder if the Lakers do decide to move Lonzo Ball away somewhere and go with someone like Garland, who is who might complement LeBron James more in style. Another obviously very intriguing prospect here is Coby White. He is not as much of a facilitator from a point guard standpoint. He in college really excelled on making plays for himself, like creating his own shot. He excelled at catch and shoot situations. He was not an off the dribble shooter as much as Garland is projected to be, but either one of those aspects could make those aspects could make either one of those players, there we go, look like a very appealing set piece to have next to LeBron James, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, that sort of thing. Maybe a better fit than Lonzo Ball, who is a distributor, a ball handler, a shaky three-point shooter. If Lonzo and LeBron kind of have similar approaches to the way the game is played, where they excel best when they're throwing the passes, maybe you get someone who's a point guard who is not like that, but is a higher level talent than a Mario Chalmers, Norris Cole, a lot of the point guards that LeBron has played with in the past, outside of Kyrie Irving, who is, his own thing. So those are some of the wild card picks I think you could see the Lakers decide to make if they don't trade this pick away, or if they don't decide that they just want to go with Jarrett Culver, who is a more of a 2-guard, and they like his chances. Honestly, I feel like the Lakers trade this. I don't think the Lakers keep this pick at all. This is a yet another trade piece for a Lakers organization that already has a lot of trade pieces, has already obviously shown that they do not mind trying to shop these players around, and possibly has pissed off these players enough where they don't want to be there either. So there you go. There's LA for you. So how about Cleveland landing that number 5 spot? They got their point guard last year. They got the man from Alabama, who I happen to like quite a bit. I like what Colin Sexton was doing as a rookie. I don't know what you do with Colin Sexton in terms of like if he is a guy that you build around. Again, he was snagged at the 6th spot last season. I don't have it in front of me. So he is not necessarily fit that draft range where you feel like they are the franchise, the guy that you build the franchise around. I don't know. He could prove to be that. But they have him either way, and they need to continue to get more pieces until they land somebody that they feel like the franchise can fit around. The fit that probably is best here is, if Culver's available, then maybe Culver, but they might want to go more with the big wing from Virginia, DeAndre Hunter. I could definitely see that happening. DeAndre Hunter would be a good fit for what the Cavaliers are trying to do right now. Let's see, what were their statistics this past year? When evaluating the Cleveland Cavaliers, the obvious statistic you have to start with was just the amount of games played. Who actually made it through the season? They traded some guys away. They, of course, lost Kevin Love, who's supposed to be the centerpiece of the team now in the post-LeBron years. Very early on, only 22 games in. But Colin Sexton, the rookie point guard, started 72 of those games, played in all 82 of them, 16.7 points per game, only 3 assists, but that's also partly because he didn't have as many teammates to actually help him out there. But Sexton had a good year. He was okay from beyond the 3-point line. Let's see, he only attempted 3.5 a game, but he hit 1.5 out of those. He was shooting 40% for the year. Not too bad at all out of Colin Sexton. So what do the Cavaliers do there? Well, like I mentioned, that you would think it has to be someone to complement Colin Sexton, and you would want to go with Culver if available. Most likely you go with DeAndre Hunter as that wing in particular. He fits what the Cavaliers have. Right now, they've got and have gotten quite a good amount out of Cedi Osman, and Osman's still fairly young, and he's a good 6'8" wing and kind of a spot-up shooter type of player. Jordan Clarkson is still with the Cavaliers, and at this point, has been like their backup guard. Maybe moving him to the 2 spot or even just trading him away could be helpful. To their rebuilding processes. It's hard to tell exactly what to do here because outside of Sexton, no one really seems like they're untouchable. If they're able to maybe make some moves, move Kevin Love around while he's still got, I guess, a bit of value, whatever it may be, then they could put some more pieces in there. But this is probably going to be a bit of a longer rebuild for Cleveland. DeAndre Hunter would be a logical choice here. Because he's just a good 3-and-D wing, as mentioned earlier. He is a good 3-point shooter in particular, which, hey, if you're building a modern NBA team, having good 3-point shooters is always key here. That and also, the next best available prospects tend to err more on the guard side of things. Now, the question here would be whether or not they want to go ahead and take the gamble and see if Cam Reddish out of Duke is worth the number 5 pick. Cam Reddish was a big-time high school recruit, obviously, went to Duke, was the 3rd guy on that freshman star-studded Duke team. He is, about 6'8", 6'9", lanky guy, got good range. He is a good shooter in that regard. Smooth 3-point stroke is actually what SB Nation has written about him. But he didn't shine at Duke. Now, part of that's also, if you got Zion, you got RJ Barrett, you don't need to shine as much. And it works out well for some players have the ball in the hands and shine a lot in college. It works out well for others to not necessarily have to deal with that. I mean, just look at Karl Anthony Towns as an example of a guy who maybe didn't shine as much in college, and it didn't matter as much that he didn't. The Cavaliers, if looking for a wing player here, could drop down and grab Cam Reddish if they, through the combine, through interviews, if they just look at Reddish and say, man, we really like this guy quite a bit. But another option here, if they want to also take another gamble at the number 5 spot and aren't impressed with the litany of guards that are available, is they might try to jump down for Gonzaga's Brandon Clarke. Brandon Clarke, you probably didn't know as much about him because he is a 22-year-old. He had transferred over to Gonzaga to finish out his playing career, but the man is another one of those examples of the modern day power forward who runs the court, all that sort of stuff. He, I want to say, I think he shot 68% as well, from the field over the course of the season. Very similar type of scenario to Zion Williamson in terms of efficiency. The only major difference here is he didn't score as much on that Gonzaga team, averaging about 16-something points a game. He is a very efficient player. He knows what works for him, and he tries to err towards that. The issue here is that he doesn't shoot well at all, and he's a little bit more of that mobile 4. I actually like that term. I just came out with that off the top of my head, but I kind of like that term for the description of the modern day power forward. He's a mobile 4. If the Cavaliers are trying to replace Kevin Love, who is your immobile stretch 4, maybe they go with a Brandon Clarke as a running partner for Colin Sexton. All in all, you've got 3 good options, I think, that fit what the Cavaliers want to do. You got DeAndre Hunter. I think Cam Reddish and Brandon Clarke are also good options there. If you're dropping down to number 6 spot here, the Phoenix Suns. The Suns now have their star guard. The Suns now have their star big man in DeAndre Ayton. The Suns have, I don't even know who else they even have on their roster that's worth noting, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. They have Bridges, Mikal Bridges. That was their rookie. I remember him now. Mikal Bridges, as the pronunciation key on basketballreference.com has here. He was their rookie last season. They've got, of course, why did I forget about Josh Jackson, the 6'8" shooting guard who was going into his 3rd year maybe, small forward shooting guard, who has been an okay, other guy for them as that wing. Phoenix could look for a couple of different things here. They could look to grab one of those point guards in Garland or Kobe White. Would not surprise me to see that happen because they have the big man and they have the incredible sharpshooter, one of the up-and-coming best guards 2 guards in the NBA. And they've got a couple of wings in Bridges and Jackson who can be accessories for them. So I don't expect Phoenix to try and make a move for Reddish or anything like that. Maybe Brandon Clarke if Brandon Clarke's draft stock continues to rise and they feel like he would be a good mobile 4 running partner next to DeAndre Ayton and in between Devin Booker. Wouldn't surprise me there, but it also wouldn't surprise me to see Phoenix err towards grabbing one of the top available point guards in Garland or White if they don't try to make a move with this spot, because there could be other teams that are willing to offer them a more established player. I think Phoenix at this point is tired of drafting guys that they want to develop. They figure with the pieces they have now, they should be doing better than they actually are. They were, of course, supposed to be maybe higher up than this in terms of their percentage for a top 4 spot. They dropped out of that, and that hurts them. So Phoenix, another team that could easily make a move here. The Chicago Bulls at the number 7 spot, I think, would keep this because they probably want to keep building through the draft. They could also be moving it. Of course, there are rumors that they could make a move for Lonzo Ball, for example. I don't know how that would fit in Chicago at all, but I guess that's an option. Chicago, a bit of a tricky team as well to figure out. I mean, Zach LaVine had a breakout year, averaging almost 24 points a game. You had 20 points a. Oh, he only played 4 games. Sorry, I was looking at the stats. It threw me off seeing Jakar Sampson average 20 points a game. That was only 4 games. Never mind. Lauri Markkanen continues to be a potential, stretch 4 type of guy that you can build around. Can Chicago stay healthy? Can Chicago, continue to grow with some of these guys, these like mid 20-year-old type of guys here, such as who did I just mention? Zach LaVine. There you go. Chicago, what do they do? Well, if one of those point guards is available, they could go with him, unless they have Zach LaVine playing point guard, for them being their main ball handler. If they want to relieve him from main ball handler duties, they could go with that. I could see Chicago taking Reddish, Clark, something like that. A couple of the prospects we haven't talked about. Apparently, the top European prospect right now is Sekou Doumbouya from France. I don't know much about him, I'll be honest with you, other than that he's young. He's not even 19 years old yet. He has been playing in France's top basketball league right now. But an intriguing thing about him is that he's for a 6'9" like wing player, he's about 230 pounds clocking in, a little bit heftier according to some of the reports coming in here, which makes him a little bit more interesting because he is not your prototypical European wing of like really lanky. He's clocking in more along the heftier side. And according to some of these reports also have him as low as like 210 pounds, so whatever. He could be a guy that if teams aren't sure about Cam Reddish, want to go with Sekou instead, because he has been already playing in the pros, and they've seen how well that's worked out for like Luka Doncic and that Giannis, for example, and they see how young he is as well. So expect him to be a guy that, maybe teams take a gamble with in this 7, 8, 9, 10 and types of spots here. Teams that like with Chicago or Atlanta or Washington. I mean, all 3 of those teams in the 7, 8, and 9 spots could really use another wing type of guy. That being said, I think I've pretty much stated all of the players that I could expect to go in the top 10. I don't think that you're going to see guys outside of the guys that I mentioned go in the top 10. I don't think you've seen enough out of Romeo Langford to make him go up there. Kevin Porter Jr., you want to talk about DeMar DeRozan comparisons. How about a 6'7" wing / shooting guard out of USC? Tana, Kevin Porter. He's a good, scoring wing. He was kind of unpredicted, kind of unproven in his 1 year of college, but a raw guy. I don't see a team gambling on him. I feel like those picks are the safer picks. That, as mentioned when I was talking with Roe earlier in the week, those are guys in Porter Jr. and Bol that I think are very, very intriguing. Very, very intriguing guys who could be taken higher if they prove themselves well in interviews and in the combine. But those are the needs of those particular teams. Wizards could really use another wing. The Atlanta Hawks need to get wing and post type of play to go along with what they've found in Trae Young, who's a heck of a player. I was wrong about him coming out of college. I thought he'd be a little bit shakier. He's developing well. So I could see Atlanta taking someone along the lines of Reddish, Brandon Clark. Those are the names, though, I expect to see in the top 10. DeAndre Hunter, Jarrett Culver, Darius Garland, Kobe White, Sekou Doumbouya, Cam Reddish, Brandon Clark, with guys like Kevin Porter Jr., Romeo Langford, and Bol coming out after that. That's what I got here on this episode of 40 Minutes of Hell. We've hit the time limit, so I'm going to get on out of here. 40 Minutes of Hell is, of course, both the name of the podcast and a pretty accurate description of what it feels like to listen to it. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Shout out to Roe Hunter, Jim Strickland, Jimmer, other members of the 40 Minutes of Hell team, and of course my co-host, as always, almost 1-year-old puppy Radar O'Reilly. I love you all. Thanks for listening. Bye.